Okay, welcome everyone. I apologize, had a little technical difficulties, and thank God for Jeremy. He got me back up. Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:15. We have school committee members on the meeting. We have Terry Donovan, Lee Kissinger, Diane Allen, and Cheryl Green, myself, our administrators, Jim Marinakis, Bob Ross, Renee Ahern, Jeremy Taylor, and we have our legal counsel, Michael Pollack. Okay, so let's get started. We have open forum. This is our first open forum on virtual, so we're going to give it a whirl. If there is anyone on the meeting that would like to address the committee on something that is not on the agenda, you may do so, and I'm going to recognize you by you raising your hand. And I'm going to let Jeremy, our technology director, to let you know how to do that. I'm going to try to keep everybody to about 5 minutes. If you'd like to speak on something not on the agenda, just know the school committee cannot respond to any of your comments, and please do not bring up anything anyone regarding personnel, any litigation, negotiations. Okay, Jeremy, if you can tell everybody how to raise their hand.
Okay, so anybody who's watching on YouTube who would like to make, not right now, Ollie. Not right now, Ollie. Sorry. Anybody who's watching on YouTube who'd like to make a public comment should switch to joining Zoom, either online or by calling in, and the number's on the screen. Once you're in the meeting, if you're logged in by computer, there's a raise hand button at the bottom right corner. And if you're dialed in via phone, you can dial *9, and that will put your hand up. And when the chair recognizes you, you'll be unmuted. We'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, and then you can make your comments.
Okay, so I'm looking at the participants. I'll give a couple minutes to see if anybody raises their hand. Please know if there's anyone on right now that would like to speak regarding the budget. That's a little further on our agenda, and I will take comments after the school committee members have their discussion. So right now, it's just to speak if you want to speak on something not on the agenda. Okay, I think we're good. I don't see any hands raised. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Jim?
Okay. So under consent, we have the approval of our minutes, the regular meeting minutes from June 23rd. We have a special meeting minutes from June 30th, executive session meeting minutes of June 30th, and then the special 8:30 meeting on June 30th, which was the results of the budget referendum. We also have 3 certified appointments. You'll notice that there are 2 clinicians. One of the clinicians replaces a retirement at the junior senior high school. We are adding an additional clinician using some grant funds, and that is to address the increased social emotional needs given the given the concerns that we have around reentry and the issues that a lot of our students and families have experienced. And then, so that is a grant funded position, no impact on the operating budget. And then we have a school nurse who will be working at Wawaloom in Lynham, and she is also replacing a retirement that we had at the end of last year. So obviously these positions are critical to replace, and we have 3 outstanding candidates who I believe are all on at this point, and I'd be happy to introduce them once the appointment is made. We also have our monthly bills, and then we have homeschool approvals. You'll notice many of them are returning families, but we do have a couple of new families that have opted for homeschooling in lieu of sending their children back to in-person learning for next year.
Okay, anyone have any questions or like anything pulled?
Yeah, pull the regular meeting minutes of June 23rd.
Yep. Anyone else?
I have a couple questions on item C, bills.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry, why don't you ask them?
Thank you. They're just questions. Just a moment. Thank you. So on the first set, there are 4 invoices and payments for license renewals to the Rhode Island General Treasurer for each of the schools in the amount of $330 each. Can you tell me what those licenses are?
I can respond to that. Those are the small water system licenses that we pay for each of the schools, Terry?
And that's annually,
Yes,
because they're considered public water supplies?
correct.
Thank you. And then on the accruals, the payment, 2 payments made for the month of May to DCYF, the amount of $9,261.25, just in general terms. Why are we making payments to DCYF?
I can address that. So under the current method for students who are placed in out-of-district placements by DCYF, the new billing strategy is that DCYF, we pay the bill directly to DCYF, not to the location where the child has been placed. So these are children that are our responsibility, who have been placed by DCYF in an out-of-district placement, and the monthly cost of their tuition goes through DCYF to pay for their tuition and board.
The statute allows the district to either pay the school directly or DCYF. This has been going on. It's an ongoing issue that a lot of districts have been having fights with DCYF as far as residency for these kids, various kids. So they've started to do this maybe about 1.5 years ago, maybe
Right.
a little longer.
And you'll notice, Terry, I think in the 2 invoices, both in May, one of them, the larger amount is the cost of 1 month. It's a pretty expensive placement. And then the smaller amount is for a partial month. The individual has graduated. So that should be the terminal expense on that
Okay,
particular individual.
thank you. Another question on the invoicing from J. Russell Water Well, the amount of $3,000 for the first and second quarter of the service contract. Can you tell me what that's for, please? Is it a service contract for all of the wells in the district, or is that for a specific school?
He is, J. Russell Water does the water testing that goes to the state of Rhode Island for all the schools. The main focus has been at Metcalf. That's probably the most robust, but he does all the schools.
So I know that there's separate invoicing for the analytics for the water testing at Metcalf,
Correct,
but this is for a service contract.
correct. So they take the samples, they send them to the Department of Health, who uses Rhode Island Analytics to do the testing. So we pay for licensing, we pay for testing, and we pay for the service.
Okay, so the service contract is for the purposes of collecting the samples and
Correct.
testing them?
Correct.
Okay.
And for making sure that all the proper documentation is filed with the state.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Everybody's good? Okay, so if I can have a motion to approve the consent agenda, less the regular meeting minutes of June 23rd.
So moved.
Donovan, second.
Second.
Okay. So I'm going to take a roll call vote. Let's see, Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. And then if I can have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 23rd.
Donovan, so moved.
Alan. Second.
Okay. Member Kissinger,
Abstain.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much on that. Okay, we have some correspondence. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Can I do the
I
introductions?
even do that actually when we're in live session. So sorry about that. Jim, yes, please introduce our new faculty.
All right. So is Carrie Ann on? I don't see your name. Did you call in, Carrie Ann?
No, I am here. Hello.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I see
Yes,
Carrie.
she is. So
Hello.
Carrie Ann is a resident of West Greenwich, I believe.
Yes.
And she is our new school nurse teacher at Wawaloom and Lynham, understanding that we may have some flexible assignments as next year progresses, but it was really important for us to get our clinicians on board, and Carrie Ann comes to us with a lot of experience in the field, and most recently was a school nurse teacher in Charahoe. So she will be joining us stationed at Wawaloom and Lynham for next year primarily. So welcome. It's official. You're on. You're in.
Welcome,
Thank
Carrie.
you.
Welcome.
Life will
you.
miss you.
Thank you,
I'm
everybody.
clapping even though you can't see me.
Thank you. Thank you,
Welcome.
everybody.
Next, we have Trish Pearson. So Trish is somebody that has kind of unofficially been on our faculty for quite some time. She previously served as the student assistance counselor at the junior senior high school. She is a certified social worker, and she has been recommended for the position at the junior senior high school to replace the retirement of Alan. So she will be able to walk right in and know all of the players, and she'll fit right in with the faculty. You've been there for how many years now, Trish? For as long as I've been here.
Yeah, about 10
Yeah, me
years.
too.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
it's nice to have you officially as part of the EWG staff now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome,
Welcome
Trish.
aboard.
Thank you.
Yep, we're excited. That's great. You're part of our faculty.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Okay,
And then-
congratulations.
We have one additional, excuse me, Alessandra Lyman. So Alessandra is actually a graduate of our school district. And last year, she served as the school psychology intern at Metcalf under the Metcalf psychologist. So she is a recent graduate, recently certified school psychologist. She did amazing work during her internship. And it was so exciting for us to have the opportunity to use some of the grant money to bring on the additional clinical support, knowing that this is a pretty significant need in the district. And we know that Alessandra has some skills that will be really beneficial for our district and for our kids in particular. So we're super excited to have you as a member of the team as well. And your salary will be better than the $10,000 stipend for being an intern. That's for sure.
Finally.
Hard to beat that, I guess, but.
Welcome, Alessandra. Very
Welcome.
excited to have you. It's
Thank
awesome to have an EWG graduate. I'm sure
Yes.
some of us were probably sitting on the stage when you walked across the stage. So it's come full circle for some of us. Excellent. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations
Now-
to all three of you.
Okay, we'll move on to, let's see, we have correspondence. Let's see, we have Smithfield School Committee has an amended resolution that they submitted. And we have the Director of Administration, Bob Ross's monthly status report. Any questions on either of those? Everybody's good? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, let's see, we have the 2019-20 budget projection. I don't know who wants to take that. Bob, Jim?
I'll take it.
Bob?
Yep. So this is the latest projection. It's as close to the year end as we can get. We still have some accruals out there that we're in POs that we're trying to shut down. Again, just like the previous projection in some of the conversations that we've had during the Zoom discussions today, this projection shows on the second line down under funding formula that we are still incorporating a reduction or a downward adjustment to the funding formula for current or for fiscal year 2020. We just simply do not know what the state is going to require districts to do, whether we're going to take an actual cut, or they're going to, attach our categorical funds or make an adjustment to the funding formula. But this reduction is about a 12.5% cut to the FY20 state aid. I'm hoping that's enough. I hope that covers the projection, because right now it shows us down a little bit. We were also hurt a little bit on revenue in the Medicaid, simply because the some of the activities that are associated with that just did not occur with the distance learning. However, we are on par for the budget, but we thought we were going to exceed it. So that hurt us a little. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Bob? Everybody's good? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we will go to new business, the 2021 budget. Just to let everybody know, we're not going to take any votes tonight on that. Jim's going to give an overview of the budget, look at some possible areas that we could do for cuts. And then we can talk further as we move along in the conversation. But I just want everybody to know that we're not taking any votes tonight. Okay, Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully I get this right. Is that good?
Yep. It's
Okay.
a little small, but
Well, there's a lot of information on just a couple of pages. So let me just walk through this so that we can kind of describe the circumstance that we're currently in. Can you see my screen or the place where I'm kind of hovering?
yeah, over the green area.
Yeah, so first we have the 2019-20, which is the school year that just ended. And I've highlighted the box that shows our full operations budget for the 2019-20 school year. That is the past, but is just a reference point. In green, we have the 2020-21 final version of the school committee approved budget. So you recall that we had an approved budget and we made a slight reduction. And so where it stood prior to the all-day referendum was a budget request of $33,861,958. And that represented a $474,094 increase over the previous year, operations-wise, which was equivalent to a 1.42% increase. So what happened during the all-day referendum is that the budget was voted down by the voters. And so on this column, column P, I have done the work to determine how we get back to a level funded operating budget, which the story doesn't end there, but I'm just going to start with this. So you'll notice that this number highlighted in yellow is the number for the FY20 school year. So if we get to level funding, it means that I would have to reduce the operating budget from what the school committee approved by the $474,094 change that we were requesting. So then it makes sense. If I subtract that, then I'm also reducing the 1.42% increase. And that sounds like if we get to zero, if we have zero operating increase, then we should be good. The problem is, in order for me to get there, I have to cut $474,000 worth of expenses, or not me personally, but we have to decide on what the $474,000 worth of expenses are just to get to level operating. And so I'm going to talk through some of the ideas that are on the table. The issue that we have is that you'll see here in this cell that I've highlighted, that we have, according to the state funding formula, an $812,116 reduction in state aid. So with the $812,116 reduction, if the towns level fund their contribution, so let's take a look at this. In order for us to get to zero, because we have the $800,000 plus to make up, the towns would have to contribute Exeter $315,000 change, West Greenwich $291,000 change to make up the difference in the reduction in state aid. So without that additional contribution from the towns, we would potentially need to cut the budget or address the fact that we have an additional $606,882 left to reduce or to accommodate somehow. So the first question is, why is it not the $812,000? And the answer is that, yes, we had an $812,000 reduction in state aid. However, we have some categories where the amount of money went up. So as an example, high cost special education, there is a reimbursement for that. We implemented some more strategic and comprehensive capturing of services, and the result was that our reimbursement went from $42,000 to $160,000. So we really took that on as a project. That was Sarah, the director of special education. Tish, the district treasurer, really worked hard on that. So we increased our revenue there by roughly $120,000. We also in this area here, Cte Tuition, these are career and technical students who are attending Exeter-West Greenwich. You know, we've been working really hard to ramp up our programming, and it was a process, but we budgeted last year $26,042 for 2 tuitions. We ended up with 7 kids, and then we have 2 additional ones minimally that are coming in. So there is an increase of 7 tuitions there, almost $100,000, roughly $90,000 of an increase. The school committee also voted to put in some money from the available surplus. So we really, and then of course there were some other reductions as well. You know, regional transportation went down 40,000. So there are some ups and downs throughout, but the end result is we basically captured $200,000 additional dollars in revenues, which offset the $812,000 reduction with increased revenue. The hope then was that the towns, through the annual budgeting process, would approve our budget, which would then make up the rest of the difference, plus address the increase that we had based on the costs that we were projecting. If the towns decide that instead of giving us the money that's necessary to close the gap, they give us the equivalent contribution as what they provided last year, which is their definition of maintenance of effort, then Exeter would give us 12,300,000 and change instead of the 12.6, which means we have $315,000 and change worth of revenues that we would not have. And I would then need to reduce the operating budget below last year's operating budget. Same thing with West Greenwich. So that's what they provided to us last year. This is what they would need to provide in order to get us to zero. But if they level fund their contribution, that's another 291,000 and change worth of reductions to the operating budget if we address this through just regular cuts. So the bottom line is this: we know for a fact that we have to get to zero, which is 475,000 roughly worth of cuts. But depending on what the two towns do, and I know that West Greenwich has already had their town financial meeting, the Exeter town financial meeting has not occurred yet. So that will occur later this month, and it will give us a better picture of what our target number is. But right now we just don't know, because we need to wait for the results of the Exeter meeting. The worst case scenario is that we have to cut all of this, and then we have to make up this difference as well, because we're not getting the help from the two towns if they level fund their contribution from the previous year. Now, if one town decides that they're going to fund and the other town doesn't, then that would basically have HALVE have the amount that we need to adjust, but it still would represent significantly more in reductions to the operating budget. So the reality for us right now, based on where we stand, is that our operating budget could likely be below the level that it was in FY20. And this is coming during a time when we know that there are increased costs and increased responsibilities based on the pandemic and all the safety measures that are in place. So the situation is not great for us. The other thing just to consider is that the the all-day referendum occurred at the end of June. In order for us to cut this much money from our budget, it has to include people. And the June 1st is the deadline for notifying certified staff that they are on layoff status. Now, we don't have a lot of flexibility because we don't have positions that exist that are not necessary. But I can't lay off somebody that I wasn't planning on laying off, given that the vote occurred on June 30th and the deadline for notification by law was June 1st. So we do not have a lot of flexibility around where money can come from. So that is an additional variable that is at play here. So given that, the next screen is, I've started to identify some areas that I'm not saying I agree or I approve or that I would even suggest, but I'm saying that these are areas that are possible legally for us to cut, because again, our choices are very limited given the fact that the June 1st deadline has passed. So let me kind of go through these items. The first two I've highlighted together because I did both of these in the budget at the same time. We did have a grade 2 teacher that was projected, and I kept that individual on layoff because I knew that we needed to at least provide some level of flexibility in case we got hit with reductions. I wasn't planning on the reductions that occurred at the all-day referendum, and I wasn't planning on either of the towns level funding their contribution, but I was anticipating perhaps a reduction in state aid. So I tried to be proactive. The grade 2 teacher was necessary based on enrollment at the time, but I projected that in a couple of different grade levels, because the numbers were tight, the numbers were close, that if we had children who their families opted to keep them home, that we could very well go below the contractual number and I could reduce the staff member, and which is why I did not call them back when we called the rest of the teachers back from layoff status. So at this point, we have confirmed that the grade 2 numbers are below contractual for the additional classroom. So I can remove the grade 2 teacher from the existing budget. I also have a junior high school teacher. So I need to come back to that in a minute because we should have done something else tonight, but I will, I'm going to address that in a minute. I have a junior high school teacher who currently is in the budget as a 0.5 individual. I was able to fund part of that position and increase her to full-time with Title II and Title I monies to address the academic needs of kids at the junior high school. Again, that is a federally funded grant position. There are limited reasons why those funds can be used. And we qualified the junior high school as a Title I school this year. And so while we previously had half of her position in the local budget, I funded 0.7 of her through the grant. So there's a 20% reduction from the local budget. Those two items combined equate to just shy of $115,000 worth of cuts. And the nice thing is there is no impact on services or programs with those cuts.
Your breath stinks.
The other additional thing is that at the last school committee meeting, we had the bought out, fair market value leases that were bought out. And we know that there were expenses that were built into the FY21 budget, but we paid out those leases in advance to the tune of roughly $96,000. That means that those expenses do not exist going forward. We were thinking that it would drop to the bottom line and those would be extra funds that were in the unassigned fund balance to help us cover COVID expenses. However, it is a reduction that we can make. It is an expense that doesn't exist. And we know, given our current condition, that we cannot pay for the additional COVID expenses. So this is an option that we have to drop that off of the expense side of the budget. The other recommendation is that the school resource officer, again, remember, this is not something I want to do, but there are very few limited options in terms of people that we can cut. The SRO is not a school department employee. The SRO is actually an employee of West Greenwich. We have budgeted for the full expense, salary and benefits in the past, which has been distributed out to the two towns proportionally. I have had conversations with West Greenwich, both the chief and the town manager, that this is going to be a recommendation. And the hope is that the funding gets shifted to the towns rather than it coming out of the school department budget. Because A, we can't afford it. We have limited expenses that we can cut. And I don't think we want to be the only school district in the state of Rhode Island without an SRO. So hopefully the towns will take us up on that offer and agree to share the cost outside of the operating budget of the schools. Then we looked at some of the smaller expenses. So there are some leases in the budget for Promethean boards. We are transitioning most of our elementaries and even some at the junior high school. We're transitioning to these new technology tools. It is not an absolute need. And so the recommendation is not to move forward this year with the new leases for these boards. We also had a small request in the Wawaloon budget for some tables, but given the circumstances of where we are right now, it's actually better, counterproductive to what's best for instruction, but it is better for the kids not to be sitting at tables so that we can maintain social distancing to the maximum extent possible. So that can get cut. We have all of our clubs and activities across all grade levels. This basically pays for the advisors, is roughly $70,000, $71,000. This is not something that is comfortable, but it is an expense that can be cut. And given the fact that we're trying to maintain pods of kids, meaning stable groups of kids, based on the recommendations of the reopening guidance, it seems counterproductive for us to have groups of kids that meet after school that come from all the different stable groups that exist throughout the day, where then they mix after school, and then, you know, increase the chance of the spreading of the virus, and it kind of eliminates the whole notion of trying to keep kids in stable pods anyway. Could we do this virtually? Could we think of different options to provide kids with these kinds of opportunities? Yes. But again, I don't have a lot of options for what can be cut. So that is on the table. We have the student assistance counselor. We just appointed our previous student assistance counselor as a social worker. She does have the skill set. However, it is an added benefit for us to have a dedicated person. And we don't have the ability to lay off certified staff. This is a vendor contract. And so it is an option. Not my recommendation by far, but it is an option. I did meet with the athletic director virtually, and we know that we need to follow guidance from the Rhode Island Interscholastic League and the Rhode Island Principals Committee on Athletics around junior and senior high school sports. It is possible that some of those sports will not run. Perhaps, you know, there are some sports right now that are practicing to a limited extent, but they may not be able to compete. And then we have no idea what's going to happen throughout the school year. We are anticipating that all the sports run. However, we have reduced uniforms and awards and every possible area to the bare bones minimum without cutting sports. I'm not saying that sports wouldn't be on the table at some point, particularly if we have to cut $300,000 or $600,000 more, but this does preserve athletics, and the reduction is in the ancillary costs. And then there are some supplies at the senior high school. In particular, there are some book requests and some table requests that, again, same purpose as Wawaloon, that they could be put off for a year. And then in terms of the books, there are some courses that required books. We put the books in the budget. Those courses are, I believe I'm correct. I have to verify with Stacy at the high school, but I believe we have a course that we budgeted books for that is actually not running. So those books can come out of the senior high budget as well. That brings us up to about $483,000 worth of reductions, which would basically get us close to, it's a little bit more than what's required for level funding to get us to the same operating budget as last year. And those are cuts that could be made legally. However, if we need to reduce more based on the scenario that I presented with level funding the local contribution from the two towns, then this list would have to be significantly greater. And I don't have $600,000 more worth of expenses that could be cut legally. I would either be reducing things outside of what is allowable per the BEP and seeking waivers from the state, Or we could have a conversation perhaps about looking at unassigned fund balance. It's hard to tell. We don't have a final budget number until Exeter has its vote. But after this set of cuts, it can only get uglier, or it could only get uglier. So I don't know that we need a vote. I think we just needed to show that there is the possibility for us to at least reach level funding, knowing that we're likely not done at this point. And remember,
May I ask
we
a
also-
question?
Yep,
Okay, so we didn't agree to level funding. What happened is our proposed budget was rejected.
correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
what does Rhode Island state law say concerning the funding formula and the town's obligations due to the reductions that are coming next year due to the funding formula, which I'm hearing are going to be more than what's currently on the table?
Agree. So the charter points us back in the direction of a particular law, and the law suggests that the towns could maintain their maintenance of effort by level funding their contribution. The law does not account for a reduction in state aid, which is typically made because the assumption, not my assumption, but the assumption based on the funding formula is that the towns could afford it. I don't know that this scenario was ever projected when the law was written. I think the law was written to protect schools, but in essence, it allows the schools, at least based on the interpretation that we got from legal, it allows the towns to level fund their contribution, which for us implies that we have to lower our operating budget because we will not have the revenues to make up the difference in the reduction from state aid.
That's
so-
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. I mean, the maintenance of effort, I think that definition is really what I think you're asking about, right? So do they level fund or do they level fund a budget? So if the state aid reduces, the towns have to make up that gap. It's our understanding and it's our interpretation that a level funding is at the dollar amount. So looking at Mr. Aronakis's spreadsheet here, Exeter was at what, 12.3 last year, 12.3, 326. Just
Correct.
using that. So to maintain maintenance of effort, they would have to produce and pay up 12.3, not the 12.3 plus the percentage needed to get up to that. It's something that we're looking at. I mean, I think Andrew is looking, he's diving a little deeper and seeing if that, interpretation can be explored a bit more. So I think that's one thing that's on the table that Andrew's looking at. There are a couple other options that, hopefully won't come to that, but that, he can discuss later.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to say is I've been doing a lot of reading in the last couple of weeks, and it looks like some things weren't well thought out as far as the, let's shut down the country for 2 weeks is what it was supposed to be. Now we're in month 4. But the bottom line is that it looks like from all the reading that I've been doing, the states are going to pass their problems off to the towns are going to pass their problems off to the taxpayers because, trickle down effect, where's the money come from? And then the people who have been hurt and don't have jobs or have taken a reduction in pay and whatever, they're going to have to come up with more money. In some cities, it's projected to be a 34% tax increase, and they're throwing all the level, the caps out at this point. So I think everything is on the table at this point, and I don't think the laws are going to be able to cover what's about to come down anyway. I'm going to suggest that it looks like there's about $329,951 available from surplus based upon where we need to be by the strategic plan and what we are projecting, where we're projecting to be. I think that all has to be on the table at this point.
So let me just say, Lee, Andrew, legal counsel is still researching all this, and we're gonna we need Exeter to have their town financial meeting July 28th. So before, that's why I said tonight, we can have a discussion, look at all this, but we're not going to look to make those kind of decisions tonight. We need to hear from legal on what our options are. We don't have that yet. And we need to find out what Exeter is doing with their monies that they're going to contribute to the budget
Right.
before we make any decisions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, Michael.
No, it's just right now it is kind of a moving target, especially since there still is a variable out there. Once the numbers are known, and then you know exactly how much how much you're looking at, then options can be discussed. So right now it's still, it's good that we're considering it, that you folks are considering it, and certainly I think all options are on the table. I certainly agree with you, but hopefully it doesn't come to, code level 5 or DEFCON 5. Hopefully it's a little bit more tempered. And then, the options to address it should fit where, what level you're at. But again, there's a lot that we're still considering. Obviously, no vote tonight. Claudine had stated that before, and I think that's certainly, it's not on the agenda for a vote, but again, it's just wanted to bring everything to your attention, and again, start thinking about it for certain.
And I think
one thing
oh, go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing, Jim. One thing that we have to remember too is originally when we did our budget, I shouldn't say when we did our budget, before the all-day referendum vote, we had Jim and his administrators had a good handle on COVID costs, and hopefully not having to go back to the towns. We were in pretty good shape with our COVID costs. Again, a moving target, but we were looking pretty good. So just know, I'm just making this comment too, because Lee, you mentioned about, putting all that money towards the our surplus into the budget. But we have to remember, we're going to have COVID costs. So somehow we have to be responsible and cover those.
Understood.
I just want to throw that out there. That's a big consideration that we need to make sure we have that in mind too.
And I think from my perspective, based upon what I've been reading, the sooner we start identifying all these COVID costs and start screaming, we're going to get more attention. And if we wait and try to get through this with what we've got, I think it's time to start identifying it all now.
Well,
create a list and start projecting where we're going to be.
The COVID costs need to be put in and I'll let Jim address this, need to be put in the reopening plan that goes to RIDE. So those should be in that reopening plan. So RIDE will see all the numbers that the school districts are looking at in order to be able to open their school districts.
And those numbers should include everything that we've already thought about and included in the budget. We shouldn't hide any of that.
Correct.
Jim, I'll let you speak to that a little more.
Can I drop down this screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just stop my share. All right. So a lot of the sections of the reopening plan, and I know I have that on the agenda next, include areas where we have to identify projected costs. So those will be in the plan. We already have access this week. We got access, or the end of last week, we got access to the first round of funds, the first round of grant funds for COVID-related expenses and planning. One of the areas that we were required to address in that funding was the academic and or social emotional needs of kids. So that was a requirement. And we addressed that through adding the clinician that was hired tonight. The remainder of those funds, we will be writing for some of the expenses that we're including in our reentry plan. So that is the first round of funding. Now, hopefully we get more because we certainly have additional costs. I think to Lee's point there, because we were trying to be responsible, we did address, for the most part, the bulk of the technology needs were addressed using unassigned fund balance from the FY20 school year. So because we had some savings in FY20 from transportation in particular, we had a whole season of sports that didn't run. We had no need for substitute teachers during the last 3 months. There were a few areas where we had some savings. We used those savings to address some of the COVID-related needs that we knew were going to happen going forward. Technology was a big one, and that was the vote of the committee at the last meeting. So that's already been addressed, and it's a COVID expense. We already purchased in bulk quite a few of the PPE supplies that are necessary for us to manage the students and the staff in the buildings next year. That was taken out of existing funds in the FY20 budget. So it's a COVID expense, but we addressed it with existing funds so that we could take care of the issue. You know, our big issue with PPE is that if we didn't order quickly, supply and demand is an issue. There are districts that have ordered and they are on the wait list. We have most of our supplies in our hand at this time because we acted quickly. So we have addressed some of those issues, and we have the recorded documents about what they cost. They are on our list. And then there are additional costs that we're projecting that are also going in the reopening plan, which I'll talk a little bit about and then on the next topic. And they're significant. You know, the total amount of money is significant. We're going to cover as much as we can through grants and stimulus money and whatever else comes our way, but it is not going to cover everything. And I think the towns were, or at least the town of West Greenwich was clear in the letter that was released that they're expecting us to come back to them with a supplemental budget request for COVID costs. I don't know that we can avoid that given the circumstance that we're in right now, but that is a discussion for probably the not so distant future.
And I think it's probably a good idea at this point to talk to the towns and set up a meeting where we can actually sit down across the table and try to figure out jointly how to come to some resolution here.
Yep. I'm not opposed to that.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, so we're probably going to set up, Jim and I will probably set up another meeting before our next scheduled meeting for the school committee. After Exeter has their town financial meeting and Jim has a chance to put recommendations together for cuts. I don't know that we'll have a new state aid number by then, but we should have one in August at some point. But we'll need to finalize revenues matching our operating budget soon. So just be on the lookout for an email, school committee members, that will probably send an email out beginning of August, end of July, beginning of August, to set up another meeting. Okay, Jim, anything else?
No, I think I tried to cover the entirety of our circumstance. You know, I don't know what else to say at this point.
Yep.
I just need to wait for the Exeter decision before we know what our target number is, and then we have some pretty serious decisions to make at that point.
Yep. And we'll have legal counsel at that meeting also. I know we have Michael tonight, but Andrew is doing the research on it, so we'll have legal at that meeting too. So we'll have all our options in front of us. And I think after that meeting, then at that point, we can probably set up something with the towns. Okay, everybody's good? All right, let's go to the 2021 reentry planning update. Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Hold on one second, because I told the community who's on this, I would open up for any comments or questions. Jeremy, can you go over how to raise your hand again?
Yeah, 1 second.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second, because I told the community who's on this, I would open up for any comments or questions. Jeremy, can you go over how to raise your hand again?
Yeah, 1 second.
Oh,
There it is.
Jim, while Jeremy's
Okay.
doing that, I think we have to go back and appoint Jillian Buckler, correct?
Yes, so there was, that's what I wanted to say. There was a supplemental that was sent out, correct?
Yes, we all got it.
Okay, so that was part of the consent agenda that I failed to mention. So if we could go back and take care of that issue, that's the teacher that I was referring to, was previously in the budget as 0.5 for writing. And we want to move her to 1.0, but now she's only in the local budget 0.3 because I shifted an additional 20% of her costs into the Title I and Title II budget. So
Yeah.
if we could do that at some point, I would appreciate having that taken care of as well. And I apologize that I missed that when I was going through the consent.
No, it's okay. I should have saw it too. Okay, so
Good.
let's go to Jeremy. Go ahead.
So if anyone would like to,
I think Jeremy's got the ones.
if anyone would like to raise their hand, you can either hit the raise hand button if you're logged in via computer, or dial *9 to raise your hand. And the information on how to join the meeting is on the screen and has been for a little bit. And I'm not seeing any hands.
Yeah, I'm not seeing either. Okay. All right. Okay. For everyone that's on tonight, listening to the budget, our next meeting that we schedule will be a more of a final determination of what we're doing with our budget. So tune into that meeting for further discussion on that. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
No problem.
Okay, so let's go to the appointment. Jim already explained it. I know you all got it in your email. So if we can have a motion, Michael, I can say her name out loud, correct? The appointment.
You can say your
Okay.
name out loud, as long as there's no discussion as far as obviously job performance or whatnot.
Okay, okay. So if I can have a motion to approve Jillian Buckler, I guess to a writing ELA/writing teacher, junior high school. It says 1.0 position, but
It is.
0.3.
Well, it is a 1.0 position. That's 0.7 grant funded, 0.3 local, and we are actually recalling her from the layoff list because we're recalling her to a 1.0 position.
And
She
we'll
was
just
a
be careful.
1.0 teacher prior. She was called back to a 0.5, and now we're basically recalling her to a 1.0 ELA position, which is what she previously owned.
Okay.
So
Let me change the motion. So if I can have a motion to recall Jillian Buckler, and it will be for a 1.0 ELA writing teacher position.
correct.
Okay, good. Can somebody move the motion?
Donovan, so moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Allen.
Aye.
Okay. Cheryl, I think you're still with us. Member Green? I don't know if Cheryl's still with us. Oh, there she is.
Did you hear me?
No, we didn't.
Okay. How do I unmute?
No,
I
you're
can hear,
unmuted.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't think I muted myself, so
Are you an aye, a nay, or an
yes,
abstain?
yes, I said aye.
Okay,
aye.
yeah, that's what we didn't hear. Okay. All right, and I'm an aye, so motion carries. Okay.
Jillian, if you're on, I apologize for the delay. That was my fault. But congratulations.
I don't think she's on. I don't see her. Okay. All right, so let's go to the 2020-2021 reentry plan update.
All right. So the last several weeks have been a whirlwind, if I do say so myself. I know that we have quite a few individuals that are on as public viewers of the meeting who also have been participating in the reentry work. I want you to know that we have upwards of 75 people who are split into 10 different subcommittees with specific tasks that have been assigned to each of those subcommittees. And the reentry plan, the draft of our reentry plan is due for submission this Friday. We have met as a large group every week since the guidance came out, including today. And the subcommittees, which are being led by district administrators, including our principals, assistant principals, our directors, have been meeting with representatives that include at least 2 members of the community or parents on every subcommittee, in some cases more than the 2 representatives. Administrators, teacher representatives are in each subcommittee as well. The template itself is now shared with what we are calling the umbrella committee, and that's the committee that is looking at how the responses to the various requirements fit together. So in other words, did somebody answer a question in one area that seems to contradict a response in a different area? Or are the decisions of one particular school impacting in an unanticipated way the decisions of another school? Now, we've worked really, really hard through constant meetings and constant communications to avoid that from happening, but I still wanted to have the protection of the umbrella group, who are strictly charged with reviewing the plan in its entirety to look for inconsistencies and to make sure that everything kind of gels together as a district plan. In addition to the subcommittees who have already begun to submit their final responses, and they're being uploaded into the template that the umbrella committee and that the umbrella committee has access to, we also have about 20 readers. So they couldn't commit to the intensity of the meetings to get the plan together, but they wanted to volunteer. So we have about 20 volunteer readers, including parents from every single level of the district, and teachers and administrators who are looking at the plan again as another round of feedback, or they're looking at particular sections of the plan to provide additional rounds of feedback. So we have the subcommittee, we have the umbrella committee, and then we have readers. So multiple layers of work, multiple layers of feedback, multiple layers of communication to make sure that our plan is comprehensive. And I have to say, for a group as large as what we have, the work and the product that is coming out of these subcommittees is absolutely amazing. It is very detailed, it is very comprehensive, very thoughtful, and may I say, very creative, in the sense that, for example, today, during the full meeting that I had with the group from 3 to 5, we unveiled our initial thoughts about what the school day would look like potentially. And it addresses the transportation issue, meaning that we can get kids on the buses, meet the crowd requirement of the buses without adding new buses, without adding any additional expenses, with the exception of potentially some added fuel costs, because we're going with an additional tier of runs, if it's something that we can work out with the bus company. But we have pretty much addressed the biggest obstacle with limited to no increased costs, based on the creativity of the subgroups, the principals, the parents, everybody that is working really hard on this plan. That plan is going to be submitted on Friday. It will then be released for the public to look at, and we will continue to get feedback and revise that plan and answer questions along the way. It is something that we will continue to do even throughout the rest of the summer, and certainly into the start of next year as well, because our best plan is not going to be perfect, and there will be new obstacles that come up that we need to address. But I feel really, really confident that we have the right people working on this, and the representation from across every single school, every parent group is amazing. And I know that there are quite a few of the individuals that have been working so hard for the past 3 weeks that are on the call. And I would love to hear from that are on the meeting. I would love to hear from any of them if they have any comments about how things are going, and you know, the kind of the track that we're on at the present time. But we will submit on time, and I will share with you the initial draft once it is completed, and it will be out by Friday.
Any questions or comments? Okay, I just want to make a comment, because so just so the school committee knows, I think Jim mentioned it last time, I think I'm on the umbrella committee.
Yes.
I don't even know what I'm on. Okay.
Yes.
I'm on the umbrella committee. Okay. So I've been on the meetings. We have meetings once a week, and I just want to say I have access obviously to the plan, and I read through the plan last night of what was in there, which I know there's a lot more that's been added now, but the participants in these subcommittees, I have to tell you, everything is well written, thoughtful, creative. I'm really impressed. Today, Jim went over the busing. Obviously, I think was the biggest thing, because I think if you have a problem with busing, nobody's going back to school. And that's been my biggest concern. So today, Jim went over what the plans look like for full return, partial return, and I think it's limited return. Yep. And it all came together. And when Jim went over, I was like, wow, how they thought of this is amazing. So I just want to let you know, I mean, there's school districts out there. I was on a chair meeting today with Association of School Committees for a couple hours this morning. And there's districts that, you know, if they don't have busing, they're not going back to school. And I didn't hear anything else. So to listen to what our plan was, how it's all been tackled, and we can do what we need to do without increased busing. Obviously, we only have 2 busing companies in the state, so to add buses, to add monitors, drivers, they don't exist. So there's districts out there that are going to have problems with just trying to accommodate busing. You know, they're looking at opt-outs and opt-ins, and parents paying for busing. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in these districts that they're looking at. And I was relieved that from what I'm looking at right now, we don't need to look at those options. So I just kudos to Jim and the 75 members on this committee. They did a great job, and the school committee should be proud of all of them. I don't know if anybody wants to speak. That's part of the committee. That's either on the phone or part of our meeting. It's up to you guys, but if you want to raise your hand, I can see your hands go up if you want to say something.
Claudine, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Cheryl?
I was just curious, are we going to see it before it's submitted?
So it's due on Friday. So I don't know, Jim, are you going to send it out to the school committee? It's a draft. I'll let Jim speak on it, but just know
Yeah.
that it's a draft and it's a working document. And Jim has said this many times in our meetings because there's so many things that change with RIDE, with DOH, circumstances going on in the state. So know that it's a working draft and it can be changed
Correct.
along the way. So Jim,
Okay.
if you want to
Yeah.
speak more on that, and then let us know if the committee's going to get the first draft.
So
I personally would like to see it, but it, I understand
no,
it's a working
I'll-
document, but
I'll definitely share it. The plan was that I would share it with you once I dropped all of the information in, and the last bits of information are likely not going to drop in until Friday. So
Okay.
you'll have it by the end of the week, but just because it is submitted to RIDE, this is a message I say at every single meeting I have, my subcommittee that I'm responsible for, the large group committee, every meeting I have. Just because the due date is Friday does not mean that once it's submitted, it is etched in stone. It will continue to change based on ongoing feedback, and certainly school committee feedback is welcome and could very well result in additional modifications, improvements, clarifications to the plan. It is the
Correct.
draft that's due Friday, but the work should
Right.
continue throughout the summer. So I will absolutely get it to each of you by the end of the week with everything dropped in, so
Okay.
you can see the full picture.
and it's not something that, is it something that needs to be approved by RIDE, or they just need to see it and document that it's in? And
Well, so we asked that question today on the meeting that we had with RIDE, and they are not approving any plans, but they are going to provide feedback, and there are certain things that the feedback will be much stronger. We are, I think, in a really good place. They talked about the things that they wanted to see. The things that they suggested that they needed to see are in our plan already. But they said they're not approving. So ultimately, every school district is going to be able to do whatever, I think, unless it's a health and safety.
well, I mean, a guideline is a specific term that people take in a different way, but I mean, depending on your school system, it should not look exactly the same across the board, in my opinion.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
okay. Fair enough.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Terry.
I just wanted to extend my thanks to everyone who's contributed so far and the commitment that you've made. We could never do this without you. And I very much appreciate all you've contributed, and Jim, everything you've coordinated.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody's good?
There's a hand up. Nancy?
Nancy Whitaker. Nancy, if you just state your name. Nancy?
I'm Nancy Whitaker. I'm a resident of Exeter, and I'm just proud to be picked. I'm an HR director for a living, and I'm on the Wallaloom committee. I brought 85 employees back to work with lots of dysfunction, and the creativity that is coming out of all these committees is amazing and empowering as a parent. I've never been proud of more the committee that I've been involved with out of all the volunteer work I've done in my career. So never is a bad idea been thrown out. And there's always been such open discussion, which is extremely refreshing as a parent during this time. So I've been impressed as a parent, and I'm hoping that the message of what we're doing can get out to the community so they understand that it's just not people making a decision, that every single thing from bathroom breaks to teacher breaks to how they handle in the cafeteria to how they still do branding, all the cool stuff are really being worked hard and thought about. And I'm just proud to be part of the committee.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you all for your service.
Let's see, make sure I don't miss any more hands. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. Let's go to unfinished business. We have capital project update bond discussion. Bob, are you taking the lead on that one?
Hold on, let me unmute. Can you hear me now?
You're good.
Okay, so the building committee met. We approved the Wabaloo and the Metcalf projects. We had bidders. The building committee consents to award to Martone and to ATC. But the building committee is going to have to make a formal vote on that. We're scheduling a meeting for the 22nd, so that will happen then. Those two projects came in well under budget, so that's refreshing, significantly under budget. The boiler was $122,000 in round numbers, or $142,000, and the Metcalf safety was $20,020.20. So that was really excellent work by everybody involved in that. For the capital project, they are still continuing, they being Torado Architects is continuing with the stage 2 submittal, which is due September 15th, 2020. That work is, we met today for about an hour or so looking at the drawings for the greenhouse and location, which was basically the stage 2 submittal. It's exactly the same as the stage 2 submittal previously submitted, so no change there. In the Walalum playground, which again, just confirming that we were going to move that to the southern side of that facility over by directly adjacent to the cafeteria. So that was just so that the D-Tech, Dave D'Amico, who does our civil engineering, he can go out and get the topography for that. Yesterday, or over the past week, I've been working with RIDE to submit the housing aid for projects completed in 2020. That was the Lynham roof. That is being submitted, and we should anticipate another $16,000 in reimbursement from that. And then we'll have met all our housing aid reimbursement, because as you remember, we received just about $100,000 in PAYGO money from them as part of that project. So housing aid was submitted for the reimbursement for 2020, and housing aid forms submitted for the projects that will be done in 21, which are the Walalum boiler and the Metcalf safety projects, which have been successfully bid and are under budget. I want to make the committee, the members who are here, aware of a discussion that I had with RIDE yesterday. In the discussion centered around the fact that the current memorandum of agreement that we have with the Department of Education School Building Authority expires on June 30th, 2021. That's been the 5 years of work that we've done to date. We've been self-funding, all done with capital reserves. We are now, as a district, we are going to submit stage 2 submittal in September of 2020. Hopefully, we will have a vote in the spring of we will have approval between September of 2020 and sometime, it could be as early as November. It could be as late as February or as late as next April, to bring the vote to the communities to support the $17 million bond. if the $17 million bond did not pass or does not pass, in all we have on file with RIDE is the approval for the $17 million, a memorandum saying you go to bond for the $17 million, but the bond fails. What I need to work with Andrew and with RIDE is, do we still have a mechanism in place that allows us to do self-funded capital projects post June 30th, 2021? Because our current MOA expires June 30th, 2021. And if we don't have a mechanism in hand, then the district would jeopardize missing out on housing aid reimbursement post June 30th, 2021. I know that was a lot, but I hope you got the intent.
I understand, Bob.
You got it, Lee?
I think what we need to do is, I think as part of the building committee meeting moving forward, we've got to construct a new 5-year memorandum of agreement and have it ready and in play. The vote will probably take place during the April referendum next year. And if it fails, we submit a new MOA for another 5 years.
Okay, good. We can flesh that out at the building committee a little
I
more.
would think so, and then bring it back to the school committee. The school committee's got to bless it ultimately.
Correct. Okay,
Can I weigh in on that?
sure.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that for us to do that, Lee, I think it's the right move. And I think it's the necessary move. But we've already identified several key projects that we've included in the $17 million bond. So I'm thinking that the only reason we're doing this is to cover the what if this fails,
Right.
that we may just pull many, if not all of the projects off the $17 million bond and just put them in the backup plan, which is the 5-year capital strategic plan. So that if we have the money to do any of those projects, we still can and qualify for the reimbursement.
Sounds good to me.
But I definitely think that that's a necessary step just to protect ourselves in the event, particularly what happened, a couple weeks ago. You just never know.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I'd like to share something with this group and this committee. Little history. Back in 03, some things I've learned in the last month or so. 03-04, the budget for the school district was $16 million, actually just shy of. By 2010 and 2011, which was 10 years ago, the budget had grown in that 7-year period to $29.4 million, almost $2 million a year. From 2010-2011 to present, the budget's grown $4 million with a $2.6 million loss in state aid. This committee and this administration has done a hell of a job at keeping the costs under control in the school district. I'm proud to serve with this school committee. I really am.
That's why I shed a lot of tears when the letter came from the West Greenwich Town Council and our budget failed. There's a big commitment by many school committee members, and my commitment started obviously when I was on PTA, but big commitment by a lot of people to the school district. So trust me, there's been many tears shed on my end with what we're facing now, because there's so much dedication. But thank you, Lee, for acknowledging everything that's been done. I just want to mention, can we go back to the memorandum of agreement? So I think we did discuss this only because I believe I brought it up, that if we were discussing if we were going to have a bond or not have a bond, when we were having issues with our meetings with the towns. So I thought that we said, and I think it's pretty much what Jim just said, that we could pretty much pull projects from the list that we have for 17 million and make the list to, for RIDE approval for another memorandum of agreement for a 5-year period. Bob, let me ask you this. Does it make sense to just get that done since there's really no work involved, other than the building committee maybe identifying which projects to put on it and then school committee discussion and approval? Does it make sense to provide that now? Like, why wait and be in a predicament that we don't know where we're at? Can we just do it now? And then if the bond pass, and we can write on it subject to, a $17 million bond being passed by the voters of Exeter and West Greenwich. As long as that's in there, I don't see why we can't do something now. I don't think we should wait and be in some kind of a predicament where we have the risk of losing housing aid.
I don't think of it's, I agree with you 100%. And RIDE advocates exactly what you're saying. The question that we need to ferret out a little better is, do we have to have $17 million of the bond projects plus a capital, a self-funded capital project endeavor? So in other words, there's $17 million of an MOU or an MOA that's going to be funded through a bond, and then just pick a number, $5 million of capital projects that will be self-funded. So it's one MOA, memorandum of agreement, but it has 2 components to it. That's the traditional model that RIDE talks about. What I want to be clear, because that's a little bit of a nuanced debate to have with people, because then are we approving 17 million or 22 million?
Well, there's 2 things to discuss there too, Bob. A lot of what's in that 17 million is absolutely necessary repair work that has to get done per the Jacobs report. So if that gets shot down, that has to be priority 1. The problem we've got is we're going to have to sit down and think about very carefully how we're going to do it, because we're going to be very much dependent, I think, upon the housing aid coming back in the following years to continue to self-fund. I mean, we got $300,000 projected next year, and we might have to spend it now anyway. So, we've really got to sit down and work this out and prioritize.
And I think at the end of the day, it's the commitment, or it's the committee understanding and the superintendent and I understanding that if we go forward, RIDE is not going to say, oh, you should have done this or you needed to do that. We're willing to do what we need to do, but we can't get to a place where it comes late in the game, which I think is what you're saying, Claudine, to a degree.
Yeah, so just we make the memorandum of agreement with the understanding that we're looking for an approval of this 5 plan, subject to a $17 million bond, being passed by the voters of Exeter-West Greenwich, and with RIDE approval of the capital project. Something, I mean, legal can word it.
Right.
I don't know why we can't have to have in place and have that wording on there.
Right. Exactly. That's what we'll flesh out and get that.
Yeah. So let's work on that.
Okay. Great.
And I mean, we did it before. We used the whiteboard and admin, and we put all the numbers up there about what a project costs, how much we'd be getting back. What a project costs, how much we'd be getting back.
Right.
So we did it last time. We're gonna have to do it again.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Obviously, it's not going to fund the HVAC system. But
yeah,
that's a 5-year plan.
That would be a big lift. That would take all of our efforts to get that. That's a big ticket item.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm worried that with the bond, the towns both told us that they would support the $17 million bond. But after what just happened with the budget,
right,
I don't have 100% confidence that there's going to be support for the bond. And I don't want to be putting in we've already put in so much money and so much effort I certainly don't want to be put in a predicament where now we're going to lose, housing aid because we didn't have a plan with RIDE.
Yeah.
Because, we met with the towns twice on our budget. We had plenty of conversations. And then the day before the all-day referendum, this letter goes out. So if that happens with the bond, I don't plan on shedding more tears.
Yeah, we got to have the backup plan with the capital asset plan, MOA in hand.
Yes. So let's
Self-funded.
get our ducks in order. Yes, let's get our ducks in order and make sure we have what we need.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, so we have important dates and meetings. School committee members just know that we are going to add a meeting to this. Jim and I just don't know when it's going to be yet. I don't know, maybe the first week of August, but it'll be before our next school committee meeting is August 11th, so maybe the week of the 3rd. So we'll keep you posted on that, and that's just to discuss our budget. Okay, so we have Tuesday, August 11th, school committee meeting. We have Tuesday, August 25th, school committee meeting if needed. This year we may need that meeting. I'm not sure about that, but probably will. Wednesday, August 26th, all staff orientation. Thursday, August 27th, there's planning, all staff, professional development. Friday, August 28th, professional development planning for teachers. Monday, August 31st, first day of school for grades 1 to 9. Tuesday, September 1st, 2020, all grade levels attend. Jim, I don't know if you want to comment on all those dates I just mentioned, but those are all subject to change. I'm assuming based on any changes we make to the state calendar or the RIDE makes to the state calendar.
Sorry, I was muted. The bigger variable will be what is the decision, what's the reentry plan that we're operating under? Because we basically are submitting 3 separate reentry plans, and we're waiting on the Department of Health, really, along with the Governor's Office and the Department of Ed, to let us know what level of reentry is appropriate based on the conditions of the virus at that time.
Right.
So if we do full person return, I think this calendar or these important dates make sense. If we do partial reentry where we're looking at potentially, every other day or a couple of days on and then a day off kind of thing, then those dates would need to be adjusted for sure. So yes, I think it's subject to change, but it's based on the changing landscape of the virus and the trends that are happening in the country and in the Northeast in particular.
Yep. Okay. All right. And we are not going to go into executive session tonight. I thought we were going to go into executive session, but that's going to happen at the next meeting. So we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
I don't think any of you want to leave the meeting tonight.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Oops.
Okay. Member Allen?
Aye.
Member Kissinger?
Aye.
Member Donovan?
Aye.
And Member Green?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much for everybody for attending and listening, and thank you everybody for all your hard work. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank you.
night.
My pleasure. Thank you.